we want to know about how to manipulate sound of the drums, man. And it's like, you know, when you don't do that or you don't have that kind of philosophy, it just becomes
TrevBeats Show, TrevBeats Show.
Welcome back to the TrevBeats Show. Now, today we have a true rhythmic architect in the building. This man's groove is undeniable. His pocket is legendary, and his signature style bridges the gap between raw hip-hop breakbeats and stadium-shaking rock and roll. From laying down the pulse for Jack White to producing incredible records on his own imprint, Rustic Records, he is a true student and master of the game. Let's get into it right now. Welcome the one and only Daru Jones to the show. Daru.
My brother, how's it going, man? It's such an honor, man. Thank you for the shout outs. I'm excited. And big respect to you, man. Thank you, man.
Thank you for being here, man. Thank you for being here, bro. Like, you know, you've been, brother, you have been so visible and so like cross genres and just inspiring for so many people, man. And I gotta say, in a true artistic way, not just drums, man. Your presentation as far as, you know, fashion, the way your drums, of course, is also an artistic thing, even the way your drums are set up. You've been really pushing a real artistic cultural thing, man, over these years. I mean, I think I first came to notice you back in the day when you did an ad for Adidas, I believe it was, right? A campaign for Adidas back in the day. And it was like, yo, this guy is serious about the full totality of artistry, man. So that's an amazing thing, man. And it's very, you know, it's really come out over these years, aside from the playing, of course, but you know, your uniqueness, man, and what you're portraying, man, is amazing. So kudos to that. Now,
thank you. Thank you. I want to give it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to give a shout out to hip hop. You know, that's definitely been architect, you know, for both of our journeys. So definitely big shout out and salute to hip hop, because that's what got me excited about the genre. Not so much what they were saying, just the fashion. Not to cut you off, I ain't going to cut you off, but yeah.
No, it's all good. I feel that though, bro. But you've taken it and you've morphed it into like a futuristic and throwback vibe. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a whole energy, man. And you know, listen, bro, it's super dope. And it's consistent. It's not a gimmick. It's consistent. It's you. So I think you can't do nothing but respect that, bro. And then you cross genres, and I love that. To me, I feel like that's the real true test, bro. When you cross genres, that's the test. You know what I'm saying?
man, I'm grateful, man. You know, being inspired by some of our heroes like Steve Gadd, you know, Vinny Colaiuta. But just to talk about Steve Gadd, one of the things that I admire when I got hip to him as a drummer, that he was not stuck to one genre. He move around, and he had an identity. And I when I got exposed to him, be it the Buddy Richmond Warrior Series concert, I was like, I don't know if you remember that series with Vinny Colaiuta, and I can definitely see the influence of Dave Buckle and Vinny from Gadd. But I didn't really know that he played all these records. Because I grew up Pentecostal, so a lot of the secular music was just like a no-no. I didn't find out. I would hear the music, but I didn't know who the drummer was until later on. But just being inspired of cats like Vinny Colaiuta, who's one of my favorite drummers.
Sure.
Them moving around, they always had an identity. I was like, I felt like, although I grew up Pentecostal, super religious background, I feel like my gifts were going to succeed out of gospel. And true enough, my dreams came true. And I'm just grateful that I stuck with it.
Man, I didn't know that about you, bro. I did not know you grew up Pentecostal, bro. That's crazy. I had no idea.
Sir.
I had no idea. So, I mean, obviously, you know, we're going to talk about what we always got to talk about. I'm going to talk about a little different, which is the setup. I want to know, because, you know, recently, where were we? We were somewhere and somebody said, you know, I knew Daru when he had a regular drum set. I said, what? I've never seen that before. I think it would have been Thomas or somebody. I was like, what do you mean, bro? Like, I never even knew that you ain't set your drums up like that. So how did that evolution happen to make, because man, it's just as much as a, you know, I'm sure it's functional for you and how you want to flow around the kit, but it's also like an art piece. You know what I'm saying? So it's like very, very, very unique. So how did you stumble across your current setup? You know, or not?
That's a good question. So this came about 2005. when I started, actually 2006, when I started working with Slum Village,
Mhm.
being their live drummer. And I remember even before that, I started getting hip hop jobs in the early 2000s. And I remember just being inspired off of, your basic 5-piece kits that you would get, from the drum shop and also played in church.
Yeah.
And, we were all just mimicking who we saw. Benny was one of my big heroes at the time. And, I tried to set up my drums like him. And it was cool. Like I remember coming up during our time where we had the VHS, it was all these instructional videotapes.
Yeah.
And I didn't show it. I was like, okay, that's different from what I'm used to. I was like, let me try it out. So I tried the Peter Erskine setup for a while at church. I tried the Jack DeJohnette setup. I was open to, seeing drummers doing different things and not shutting it down. Versus nowadays, it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
When you're doing something that's outside the box, you get bullied or people be like, but we came up at a time where, we seen rock and roll drummers that had 2 and 3 bass drums, Ted Bozio, and that's what inspired me. I was like, okay, now when I started getting these modern drummer magazine, I noticed that they would showcase, these legendary drummers and their drum kit. So I feel like the drum kit was their identity, just like, being an artist, like they say, image is everything. And I feel like, speaking like on Run DMC, they were Adidas, and they had an LL Cool J that wore Kango. So I just felt like the drum set was the identity for that drummer. I remember seeing Benny at the time. He had a China set up on his left side, and that was different. So I was like, man, one day I've always wanted to eventually, develop my own identity. And then basically, I started getting hip hop jobs in the early 2000s where I was like, okay, after seeing Questlove, big shout out salute to Questlove, Amir. I remember seeing his drums. That was the first time I seen a drummer play like an NPC. I was like, okay, where's the rest of this guy's drum kit at? Because all he had was a snare drum and a kick drum. And I was like, yo, where's it? And then it made sense when I started diving in, noticing that Quest was emulating, break beats from like Clyde Stubblefield, Jabo, Bernard Purdy. And I feel like that their type of sound was just replicating what producers were producing, which was not busy. As you know, hip hop has grown nowadays. There's a lot of more notes.
Yeah.
There's like a fusion hip hop and then like a trap hip hop, but like boom bap, like hip hop. I feel like he was emulating. I was like, okay, that makes sense why he didn't feel like he needed all those drums, all those times. So I was like, okay, let me downsize, taking the times away. And then I had a small car at the time. I had a Chevette. And then this was during the time where I was doing 2 and 3 gigs at a night. I was like, man, I need to be able to just have something where I can just store in my car.
Wow.
So that was the reason why I downsized my kit. But seeing Questlove's kit in the Modern Drummer magazine, it gave me the confidence like, okay, I can play a smaller kit. And so that inspired me to downsize my drum kit, just a snare drum. But as you know, in hip hop culture, it's always about like, don't copy, don't bite. Like back in the days, rappers, they would, if you sounded like them, you had an issue. Like people was ready to fight. If you were rocking the same jury or so, that stuck with me mentally. And I was like, okay, I downsized my drum kit like Questlove's, but I never wanted to be in the same room and he'd be mad at me like, yo, why is this guy biting off my minimalist set drum? So I was like, well, what can I do to give me an identity? So since I play traditional grips, as you know, there's 2 different grips when you play a kick. There's the mash grip. Then there's the traditional, which, I love Buddy Rich and Gene Kruger. I remember I had an older mentor playing traditional in church. This is before gospel chops. And I was like, yo, what kind of grip is that? Like, and he was, he snuck, he was checking out the jazz drummers. I was like, I want to learn that. So I learned how to play traditional and develop those muscles at an as a teenage, when I was, young teenager. And I remember getting trumpet lessons in middle school and just getting those instructional videotapes. Fast forward, I remember seeing the marching band guys set up their drums angled because the drums were hanging off their body. They were playing the quads.
Right.
And they would have the snare drums like, tilted sideways. And I was like, okay, dang. I understood that concept. And I was like, well, what if instead of angling sideways, I was sloping it going down like a hill? So it was pretty much just an experiment. I just didn't want my drums to look like Questlove's because I downsized mine to just a minimal configuration. And I was like, yeah, what would happen if I do the floor tom? So originally, I don't want to say gimmick, but it was just for looks. I just didn't want my kit to look like Questlove. So I was like, and then I had to learn how to replay drums again. And then also I had to figure out how can I get a lot of tones? Because now I'm missing my rack tones that I'm used to going to,
Yeah.
So it challenged me and it made me be more intentional. So that journey started in 2005, 2006, and then I just kept adding on to it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, I think it's interesting as far as the concept. So, see, through this whole thing, you were trying to be original. You didn't even want to be look like you were infringing on someone else's, setup. And we do come from that generation of biters and all that stuff. Like being original is champion. And now it's kind of like copying and covers and all that is more kind of what the norm is. But when we came, it was like, nah, you did your own thing, right? So I think it's interesting how that came together because you're right. If you look at any of the great traditional players, just ergonomically, you want to, tilt that snare drum a little bit because it helps with, it came from when they don't want to play like this. So, you can play like this. So I think that's amazing, bro, because if, coming up in the 90s and the 80s when hip hop was kind of new on the drum side, all the drum companies for some reason were promoting big drums as hip hop. You remember that? It was like, it was the complete opposite. To get the sound we were trying to get from breakbeats is more closer to a jazz kit than some big old bass drum, and then piccolos came out. So you had like a gigantic bass drum. You were one of the people that started really pushing what the tone actually was to how to really communicate it live. Is like, no, it's not some huge drums. It's actually these drums kind of open and kind of tighter, you know what I'm saying? And how you play, so I think that was another turning point too. I mean, obviously Quest did his thing too. His drums always sounded like a record, live or and he plays very light, so it's very balanced like a drum machine. You know what I'm saying? And you can also, when you do that, it doesn't pop the gates and compressors as much, so you can really get that thing sounding crazy and, and tighten that thing up. So I think that's another trick too that people don't understand is that sometimes you don't have to hit as hard and it actually comes off a little bit more, a little funky.
Yeah, you get the true sound of the drum, and that was a cheat code that that's a cheat code that Amir shared with me, one time that we were on the same stage. But it was shout out to Jabba and Clyde because I really just tapped into that and just watching the live videos and for them to be able to play those grooves for 4 or 5 minutes consistently, just like Fela Kuti. I forgot my man that played the Fela.
Those were woo.
Yeah, and like just being able to play at that dynamic and velocity for that longer time. It's like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. So what really helped me is being a composer, being a producer. I started producing as mid-teenager. I remember going to the studios. I was always a young guy hanging around older people. So I had a lot of older mentors and I'm so grateful. They took me in, they would show me how to use the SI-100, the rack mount. And then I was like, okay, that really helped my approach. And also when I started getting hip hop jobs, because that was a dream of mine, I was like, okay, if I get hired to be a musical director MD, I know the audience for the style of hip hop that I'm playing. I'm speaking like Talib Kweli, playing those records. Like I know the audience, they want to hear that. And sometimes we would play to the track, but I was like, man, I want to be able to, if they don't have the DJ playing track, us playing on top of the track, I want to be able to just be able to have that same sound. And it just took, we've always experimented. We was using gaff tape, to put on drums and all of the things, the putties and all. But I was like, okay, I just started really tapping into that. Nowadays, they have companies that actually make stuff that you can put in your drums, big fat snare drum and it goes on. But we was using all the things. We was using cloth, you know what I'm saying? All of the things. So just bringing that studio, that's what we were doing, studio sessions. But we started bringing that into like a live setting and just learning how to just play dynamic and just play to the room. But that really helped me tap into getting tone and sound. It was like they were trying to get piccolo sounds out of the drums that they made. They were not using piccolos, but it was like he was telling the speakers like, all I had to do was tune them. They made all the piccolo sounds. They didn't have to do all that. But he was like, we just learn how to tune and let the drum without adding all of the it's like playing with a kick drum without a pillow inside.
Yeah, different. Yeah.
Different.
Yep.
And you just have the control of feathering the foot.
Yep.
Like when you're playing straight ahead, it's
Yep.
just certain things. It's like now when I started mixing, that helped me as well because I'm actually mixing myself. And I know you do the same thing. We're EQing ourselves while we're playing it.
Sure. Yep. And the
So
lead mics, less mics sometimes that comes off a little better. You know what I'm saying? Like the old days.
fast.
You know what I'm saying?
So I want to give away too many secrets, but you
No,
know
no.
what it is. Those are
Hey,
things.
it's bags full of secrets, man. I learned so much stuff. I mean, certain of the other generation of cats or engineers, old school engineers, and say, "Hey, man, have you ever done this?" And cut up a head and do all this stuff. Like, man, what the?
Yeah.
But
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? It's a fun study, you know what I mean? But you have to want to study. And I think that that's another thing that speaks to, a similarity of both of our journeys. We're very in tune and very, we want to know about how to manipulate sound of the drums, man. And it's like, when you don't do that or you don't have that kind of philosophy, it just becomes, you're not doing your due diligence, on your instrument, man. It's like you can't just be a guy that shows up to a backline kit and plays the same thing every night and go home. That's not going to last a whole career. And if it does, you're not going to be, you're a dime a dozen. You got to do something that gives you a unique thing. So now with you, we've talked about the kit, but let's talk about the playing that happened because the kit's cool. But the other thing that makes it unique is the way you play that kit. And so your time, it's like, I'm not going to call it drunken hip hop. I mean, we kind of have terms like push pull or, when you're a programmer and you make hip hop, you know what this is. This is the snare drum on the MPC, 60, with 3 clicks to the right. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's literally making these things happen live. And so that command over your limbs and really at some point exaggerating that thing, but still being well aware of where it is. Where did you develop that part of your playing?
Man, I always say that you are what you eat. So I listen to a lot of that vibe, so it just comes out automatically. If you listen to a lot of rock, this is what I think. If you listen to a lot of rock or a lot of things from a certain era, you automatically it's just going to get in. It's like food.
Yeah.
It's going to start pouring out of your, out of your limbs. So I just listen to a lot of that type of style. Big salute, rest in peace, J Dilla. Also, a lot of the '90s and current producers. Shout out to DJ Premier and Pete Rock. The Bomb Squad, Dre. Just when you go back. Oh, shout out to Break B Lou. He was the guy. Him and his partner Lenny D. They went and sets out all the breaks to put them on one collection, which was a go-to for hip hop producers to sample from. So just the whole loop aspect. Right. It seems like when that one comes around, it was always some sort of glitch.
Yeah.
That was to me, that was hip hop.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Even the way because we're not computers,
Right.
we can play like computers, but we like when certain records like Motown, a certain era of when music was recorded, they left the mistakes in. Like if the drummer accidentally hit the side of the rim, or or if he dragged, like they left that in, and to me, that was implemented in those hip hop producers that I mentioned, and I really just kind of that's what I listen to, so it just comes out automatic. That's the best way. It's hard to explain. I know sometimes when I do play it in clinics, the nerds they be like. They just counting it and dissecting it to the teeth. I was like, I see what y'all doing, but for me, it takes the feel away. It's just a feeling thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, bro, it's not. Yeah, it's like, man, hey, let me tell you something, man. So when I did the Super Bowl 4 years ago, I guess for the after broadcast, not the live one, there was some edits, right? Because maybe I don't know if it was language, whatever. And do you know somebody hit the comments like, "Hey man, so I heard the thing. Was that a bar of 9 and 11 that you guys did in bar 75?" I said, "Man, that was a doggone edit, bro. Like, are you kidding me? Come on,
my God.
man. Like, stop.
Yeah, man.
It's a feel thing, man. Sometimes cats take it so literal, and some things are what we call intangible. They just happen, bro. It's just like you're not. We're definitely not sitting up calculating. Okay, I'm gonna put a bar of 7.5 here to make it feel like, man. It's playing a pocket and you lay the snare drum back, but everything stays the same, or lay the hat back, and it's like it's just a moment. You know what I'm saying? But now here's where the trick comes, because we love you doing that, but then you say, yeah, but get a load of this. And then you go over into a complete other genre with one of the people that's pushing the line, and it culminates to that SNL show I saw, and it was before we was throwing glasses, man. I was throwing, man, what out here, man. If I would have known about the glasses, I would have thrown it back then. Like, yo, that was because it was live, and it was like, it reminded, it just, the closest thing I could think of is Hendrix, bro. It was
Wow.
it was like, when Training Them was playing, it was that moment, and it was everybody on their same wavelength, killing. So how do you switch that mindset from, I'm gonna be completely in this Dilla pocket and all this, but then now I'm going over here where eighth notes have all of the freaking value? Like, how do you switch to that, man?
That's a good question. And just to add on to what you're saying, we're being present. That's what it is. We're being present. And it's what we're doing, but it's our environment that we're playing in. We feed off each other.
Yeah.
Versus playing to tracks.
Yeah.
Or back end where you got the person counting. I think that's the difference. Just when you and that all of it works. You're like, whatever the situation is, raise up to whatever the occasion. But in our set situations, we're playing to the environment. But as far as with Jack White, I'm glad that I came up when I did, because I got a chance to see Kenny Arnoff and all those guys.
Yeah.
And Vinny is he's one of my favorite drummers of all time. Like, I've seen him. I haven't seen him play in a hip hop setting yet. I did see him play with Shaka Khan, which cracked my head.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I was like, yo, this cat can play R&B.
Oh, he's a monster, bro. It's different.
Killing.
It's different.
He's one of those, and Omar Hakeem, just seeing those drummers adapt and be able to, that really helped my mentality. So I've always, when I really tap into rock and roll drums, because I've heard of it. I remember having Terry Bozzio instructional VHS tape, and just seeing Mitch Mitchell and just those different guys play rock. Okay, now that just the basic rules of playing rock is if I get those opportunities, I know how to, be a chameleon. That's what we saw.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Coming up, like, we didn't just stick with, gospel. We moved around. So I was like, I wanted to be able to, if I'm given an opportunity to play Caribbean music, at least have the basics. And so as far as rock and roll, I really feel like Jack brought me in, because Jack is a huge fan of hip hop as well.
Right.
So I feel like he wanted me to add my background into his music, which was great. I made the conscious decision of, okay, I know Meg White, who played on his White Stripe records.
Right.
She was not the most technical drummer, but what she did was epic. And it was very simple. And I was like, I made it. Jack was like, okay, when we played these songs, you guys have free reins to bring your vibing. But I was like, man, I know people in the audience, they want to hit on Meg beats.
Right.
So I tried to find a thin line where I played those and then implement a little bit of my sauce every now and again.
Yeah.
But from what I've learned with hip hop, with rock and roll, it's just playing at a louder dB.
Right.
And it kind of reminds me of hip hop loops, because it's just playing this. It's like a break, but it's played at a higher dB, where it's not a lot of subdividing and ghost notes. Like, it's played at that. So I just remember, this is why I like playing rock and roll, because I feel like I'm letting off steam. Like that's another way of being like, playing at the loudest. Like, when like when you're shedding.
Yeah.
When you're shedding, you're not always thinking about, okay, let me tell a story, or let me just you let it all out. All the stuff that you may not do, depending on the genre where you may not play on the stage, you letting it out. So I remember before we played the SNL show, Jack was like, yo, just act like we just had a rehearsal jamming. So a lot of that stuff was happening in real time, because we was in a pandemic. A lot of changes and stuff that we were making up right during the rehearsal and right before. It was like we were like making that stuff up. Cause when you're doing camera blocking, you're doing the song over and over.
Yeah.
And some of the things we were adding, like during camera blocking and beforehand. So it just happened. I just think that that particular song that we played, it just worked out. Like just being able to we feel relaxed and just do something in real time where it's not overly produced. We just jamming, and then that's just a part of showmanship. Seeing guys like what's the SNL drummer?
Oh,
That's my
yeah.
boy too.
Yeah.
Pelton.
Yeah.
Sean Pelton.
Yeah.
I love Sean Pelton, and I like how his showmanship and how he plays. His swag, and I was just like, okay, that's the aggression that I bought. But I always, as you know, because coming up in the area that I did, I got a chance to see different genres play in different settings. So I was like, when it's time to break out that vibe, I feel like I've been trained just by watching and also in my career playing and studying it. So that's the best way I can answer that.
Real quick, if you're new here, welcome to the TrevBeats Show. Make sure you subscribe if you want to stick around. And for the regulars, if you ever feel compelled to throw some extra support our way, check out the membership options next to the subscribe button. It's strictly for those who want to help us do more, but your viewership is support enough. Now back to the show. Yeah, nah, bro. I hear that. That's an honest answer, man, because it was however it led up to it, that was just a very incredible moment for that band. And it was just a thing that was very important, man. And I'm glad that we're sitting here talking about it because all this time later, because I think I texted you right after or something. I was just like,
yeah, it's crazy, bro. It's crazy. I had to cut you off. You know how you go to NAMM or different conventions and you run into your heroes and you run to people that know about you that you didn't know.
Yeah.
And so I would have these numbers saved on my phone and people like the guy from Dream did it, like a lot of people that I just had saved on my phone text me. I was like, man, was everybody watching this? It was crazy. It was crazy. And I remember as a young adult being in church and one of my older mentors was like, yo, one day you're going to get that moment where you're going to do something where everybody's going to see it. And sometimes people say things, you think it's a fairy tale, but I feel like that was one of those moments that happened where it's like for 3 weeks straight, like it was like, I just couldn't believe it. Like, Narada, just people getting my number from other cats to call me. It was I was just lost for words and grateful.
Yeah.
And I just give credit to God. Like I just want to be a vessel. So I'm just grateful to even get that opportunity because I was not touring with Jack at the time.
Right.
Like he was touring with Carla for that record.
Yeah.
And I remember when opportunity came, I got the call as I was going to Planet Fitness. Then I was like, man, I never get a FaceTime because Jack don't really use, I don't want to tell the secrets, but he don't really use it to phones. But I think he might have used his computer. And I was like, a FaceTime? I just went to side ring. I was like, I'm about to go to the gym. And then I just went in my car and he told me that he got an opportunity because somebody was not following on the protocol that they had, like staying distance away. And they asked if you can come in. He was like, I want you to, do this. And it was intense because of at that time, if somebody tests, positive, it would forfeit, and we had to keep getting tests. It was just so many layers.
Crazy.
But I guess the creator and universe wanted us to deliver this message during those times.
No, that's fire, bro. Yeah, no, my boy Big Game James was over there too. Genius on bass.
Oh yeah.
Out, man. You know what I'm saying? And those cats, man, have been. So I was just watching TV, like, man, this is like amazing. Like, just seeing everybody doing what they do, man, and shining, and because pandemic had a lot of people down. You know what I'm saying? So it was just it was just a refreshing moment, bro. But first of all, let's just shout out the gear in general because you have so many signature things, and we'll put all that stuff in the description. So, but let's go from drum, cymbals, all the things you're involved with, like. Give it to us, man, because you've really been an inspiration as far as doing branding, man.
So I have 2 drum kits with PDP, and they're produced by DW Drums, and it's the Daru Jones New Yorker. The first edition came out in 2014. That's the gold and black sparkle fade.
Yeah.
I know some stores still have it, but they discontinued it because we came up with another one. The Daru Jones Blue Fade, which was inspired by when I was on tour with Jack White. We would wear blue on stage. And so when I was talking to my PDP rep, Rob Dean, I was like, man, it would be great to have a kit that I can use for this tour. Because sometimes we would do B shows. We would go we did a show at a record theater, and it was announced on Twitter 30 minutes beforehand. So I just wanted to have a kit, if something like that happened, I could, I can use my kit was the color of our dress code.
Right.
And so another feature that's on that kit, all the drums they're called snars, which is a tom and snare together. I know you're familiar with that.
Right.
So that's one of the products, Daru Jones New Yorker 1 and 2. I have cymbals for pipe steed, the PST, DJ's 45s, and what inspired those cymbals, they're all made size 12. So, it's a size 12 hi-hats, ride and crash. And the PSG TS, they had this line where they have the Swiss cheese cymbals, where it's like that lo-fi kind of Nintendo 8-bit sound.
Yeah.
And that was really hip. A lot of different companies were doing that. I was like, yo, it would be great to just have some cymbals where you could put in your backpack. As you know, sometimes we go to jam sessions, some people's cymbals may not be up to par. I'd be like, okay, I got my own, I can just slap on there.
Yeah.
So those cymbals are available still. One of them looked like a vinyl record because they DJ, and my name is Daru Jones, so it was a lot of play that we used with my name and the cymbals. I also have drumsticks with a company called Ahead, distributing through Big Bang, and those drumsticks are made out of aluminum. They pose to last longer than wood sticks. I have 2 different models. I have the gold and black, which matches the signature drum kit, the first one, and then I have another color, blue and white, which matches the current kit. I also have a drum key. That I don't know if that key is still being available. Rest in peace, Marco Saconia, because it was a company that he was working with where he was doing the signature drum keys.
That's right. Marco.
Yeah, so I had that. It was made that looks like the vinyl record because my logo is Rusick Records, and it's my face within a vinyl record. I've been branding that thing for over 15 years. So I use that on all our products. It's on the drum kit, on the drum head, it's on the sticks. So those are 4 items, and also have a sub mic with a company name Solomon.
Yeah.
Solomon.
That was
thank you.
Yeah, that was a great.
It's like the Solomon mic, and then I believe that I did a limited collaboration with a company, Junk Hats. They were this company in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yep.
The Proctor Funkadelic style.
Oh yeah, I got them all the way up to 16. You know what I'm saying? I got regular ones, and then a middle one, and then all the way up to 16. My 16s are with my drums in Nashville, so I don't get to see them. And last time I was with them, I forgot to bring them home. That thing, man, I use those a lot. Those Junk Hats as an overdub with a Junk Hat and a clap stack, bro. It's like boom.
And speaking of, I want to give you your flowers, bro, because that clap stack, you were a genius. That ideal, it really changed. By you being a producer and looking to, have that ideal of making that clap stack was evolution, because we would have to have some type of hybrid drum kit, like a pad, so to be able to have something acoustic, you changed the game. So I believe that inspired cats like the Junk Cat, and there's other companies, but big kudos to what you've done, with all of the jobs that you have from Dre and just being a producer. Big up, man. Big respect, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, man. It was, we don't get, it's like a unicorn when you get to leave something behind to the thing that you love. And, we weren't setting out to do that, but it's like we kind of stumbled upon something and it ended up being a new genre. I mean, it literally was out of necessity, because I remember years ago, 2005, I was doing Jennifer Lopez, and I remember the pictures. I had these big refrigerator racks, and it'd just be a clap and a snap occasionally, a few things, but all this stuff. And I remember rehearsals would be cool, in a controlled environment. There's no, there's only side fill, so it's not, a gig. So then when you get to the gig, everything's been dialed in a controlled rehearsal environment. So when you get to the gig and they put the front of house on, we weren't, the gates and all the thresholds.
Oh, you couldn't hear
that. So we playing a ballad, and all you hear is, and I was like, man, I'm only playing the clap and snap, and I got all this junk I got to bring, and it's got to be a way to get this frequency. So it ended up being like a almost 10 years from that point trying to figure it out, and then I ended up going to my current cymbal company, Istanbul Agap, and that was the first thing we worked on, man, and the rest kind of is history.
Man, that was, you revolutionized. I think that was definitely an advocate for just a lot of companies that I'm gonna mention, even some companies that I use, but that was used on the forefront of doing that. Now everybody's, doing tambourines or finding something that's similar, but that was revolutionary for you to do that, man. Big kudos. And I've always been a fan of your drumming, man. Just genre bending. I remember saying you were Herbie. I'm like, yo, this is the same respect. So I'm honestly speaking with you because I respect your work as well, your artistry and your input as being a musical director and also a composer, and just the business side of things too. I know we've had minor business conversations it's been great to go to another peer because sometimes we don't always have that. We just bumping our head trying to figure things out. So it's really good to just have another peer that I can be like, yo, like those.
Oh yeah,
right. You know what I'm saying?
As a matter of fact, just today I just encountered some today with a company that I was rocking with, not drum related, but I was like, oh really? Okay. I was like, sometimes, man, people act different, and you gotta, sometimes just, make a decision. Is this how you want to deal and interact with some of these companies? Because sometimes it could get weird for whatever reason, and it is what it is. But that's another show. But so the fact that you are a producer, I think, has to play into how you play, especially in the studio, right? So sometimes when we don't get from behind the drums, we stay in, we don't have the other vantage point. We're not even thinking about this bigger zoomed out look of what we're doing. So when you go to a session, right? I mean, you have your kit and your tones. How much interaction do you give? Because I notice you're another person where your sound comes out on whatever you're doing. So are you going in with, this is what I want? Like, no, I don't need everything close mic. Like, I only want a few mics here. And how do you interact like that when you go into a session, or what's that conversation like?
That's a good question. It's all of the above. Like if I'm in the studio and it's an engineer that's booking the room, and so they're adapting to the environment, or if it's an engineer and it's their studio that they work out of, I trust that they know what's needed. But as far as the placement, it depends on what I'm tracking.
Right.
If it's something where it's going to be toms and all of the things, then I'm like, okay, I can give my recommendation. But I feel like they know that room, and so I just kind of work with them. But if I'm like bringing my own kit to the studio, then a lot of times I'm like, this is what I normally do, because a lot of times, sometimes I go into sessions, and because I may use an 18-inch kick drum, sometimes the engineers, they like, you got to have a hole in the. It's like, oh, I'm like, yo, nah. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, all you got to do, telling me put the microphone on the same side as the kick. It's like tricks that they may not be hip because they used to mixing rock records,
right?
Or engineering. So that's when I would be like, okay, nah, this is, how you do that. But then there's some things that I just bring, like it might be a beater, the mallet beaters with the fuzz.
Oh yeah.
Different little tricks like that.
Exactly.
But for me, I'm always trying to make the engineer not have to work hard. So knowing exactly what's needed and being like, okay, and also playing in a certain way to give the engineer, whoever's mixing, to give them room where they can. Because if depending on the genre too, some things call to be playing at a high dB, but that's not always the case for the records that I'm doing.
Right.
And so I'm just always trying to make sure I'm giving just enough, even with the mics, like the placement. And sometimes, it revert to layering.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of hidden tricks out here. I mean, look at, listen, one, I don't know if a lot of people know, Bernard Purdy used an 18 on a lot of records, man. A lot of folk records. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
I remember looking in the old Sonar catalog, in the 80s, and it was like, man, he's got an 18, and then you'd have the
Wow.
not in order. You'd have the bigger one first. Like, there's just all these things, man, that people do to get, different sounds, and it still can be unique. It doesn't have to be what we see now, where it's go on to social media, look at this person, copy exactly what they have, copy how their hands look when they play, copy everything. It doesn't have to be that. You can still be original and still work. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to be scared to be a little different. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's something that I think you've been very inspiring to show, like, hey, listen,
Thank you.
I'm me, and me comes through all these different genres, and you don't have to compromise who you are, bro.
Man, it took a while, but I wanna give credit to people that inspire me. Like, I remember when Chick Corea, when they would do records with the Electric Band or, certain people from that era, they would use the same musicians when they would do their solo projects. So I remember getting a John Patitucci record. And I'm like, okay, Vinny, Peter. And I was like, back then we transcribe with our ears.
Yeah.
And so I remember just learning how to be like, okay, I know that touch, I know that tone.
Yep.
Even though I feel like they all were playing with Yamaha kits at that time.
They were, yeah.
But I knew Vinny's tone, you know what I'm saying? And because of the tuning and his touch.
Right.
And I learned that early, just transcribing. I was like, one day that's something that I want to do. So that's just something that I learned because we didn't have YouTube. We had to just figure it out. We learned, we learned. And so that just stuck with me. So I always wanted to be like, okay, even if I'm in a situation where I'm just going to use a kit that they have there and not do anything with it, if it's for a certain record, I was like, what can I do? Or what I may add a couple things that would be like, okay, it contribute to like my identity.
Yeah.
Whether it be like a clap, like just something minor. It may even be the way that I attack hitting that kick drum, feathering or hitting like some type of bottom, just doing something that like I want my sound to cut from regardless. And there's been situations where I played on records and as you know, whoever's mixing the record, they can either make or break what you put down. I'm like, yo, okay, I played this way, but that means you still got to mix it so it can translate to how I'm playing. Because sometimes when you translate it in a way, and if it's not mixed that way, they add the gates and compression. It takes the whole. It's like, yo, that's so when you
you go through all this trouble and you come back like, man, y'all don't even got the overheads on. What's going on here, man?
Man,
it's crazy, man. Like
crazy.
Hold on. Wait, can you hear? Do you hear that? Wait.
No.
Oh, it's the big elephant in the room, AI. Yeah, man. So, I love to talk to everybody that's out here in the mix, man, about this period that we're living in. And of course, we came through seeing all these other changes from analog to, digital and the ADATs and to DAWs and all that and where we are now. But as a super creative person that's really in the mix in all these different genres, what's your take on AI? Both musically and using it in other ways other than music.
And I it's bittersweet, but as I'm tapping into it, like I love the STEM aspect because now I'm doing a lot of hybrid drumming, and I love being able to now use my experiment with my sampler pads, not giving too much away. But this video's out there of me playing, like one man band in it. So I do like the stems aspect, like really using the original sounds that the producers use and being able to play that. Because a lot of times, when we transcribing the stuff live, we're trying to tune our drums like the sample records.
Right.
So I do like that aspect, but I do feel like some of the soul is being taken out of, some of the AI stuff. Like it's just like stuff is just too pretty, too perfect. So it's and just learning, watching documentaries and seeing how people mix records and they always go by the books. It gave them that sound like Led Zeppelin, having things, maybe the kick drum, snare drum on the left side, and then the toms on the other side.
Right.
Just all those little things to me made those records. So I feel like the AI it's like making presets.
Right. Exactly.
So the presets, it's like, I don't feel like people are getting individualized mixes.
Right.
With character.
Yeah.
So but I do feel like the AI is helping speed up the work process on certain things. So certain things I'm still tapping in, and I'm like, okay, I can see the need to that, and then other things like I don't know yet.
Yeah.
What about yourself? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm all for it for what it is. I mean, I think it's definitely helpful in a lot of situations. And I did a full AI album almost 2.5 years ago just to mark where we were because I saw where it was going. And my whole concept is not the what it can do. My concept is what the workflow would be because it's like, yeah, we know what it can do. It can really enhance things. It can take things. It can mimic them. It can take the instinct of something. And that's the other thing that's evolved is not only is it taking the feel aspect, but the instinct. If you do certain things in certain genres, the mix goes to that and the instinct, and that's where I think the actual AI comes in. And I feel like using that with what we do creatively, you can really make for some interesting things. I mean, listen, it's just like having the ability to make the samples that you use. I mean, sampling is not new, so it's just like custom making samples if you use it like that. Now, mind you, even on a legal side, if you're just prompting only, you can't even own that. So that's not really the conversation. You have to put something to it. So if you upload into a Suno or one of those things and then manipulate that you uploaded something in either melody or lyrics or, drum beats or keyboards or whatever, now it's more of an interactive thing. And the stuff that it spits out, if you know how to manipulate it, it could just be another enhancement. I think people automatically go to this thing of, I prompted something and it has to be the master. It's like, bro, it could just it might just be the demo. It might just be inspiring the copyist. And then he writes it out and y'all go cut it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I feel that. And so I haven't tapped, not to cut you off, I haven't tapped into Suno. Is that the name of it, Suno?
Yeah, that's one of the major ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't. I've seen it, but I haven't tapped into it.
Yeah.
That yet. But I'm intrigued now.
With the
I
one
do
man,
know,
dude, and the STEM aspect, bro. Let me tell you something, Daru. If you ever want to talk, I have a video up on YouTube too about my workflow and how I use it. But for that specific thing, bro. Whoa.
Dang, you just cracked my head.
Are out of here, man.
Oh man, dang. But it's crazy because I remember big salute to Will.i.am. He got a space in LA. FYI. I don't know. Have you been to that space yet?
I don't think I haven't been there. No, I haven't been there.
Okay, Will always on some futuristic stuff, but the building, the studio is looks like Star Trek.
Sure.
But I remember bringing my Darutronics. That's what I bring my hybrid drum kit, Darutronics. And I remember seeing him and like Alchemist and just different people just like bugging out, like, word, you're playing my stems. And he was like, yo, you going with the future. And so that was really cool to just get that nod, because sometimes, when you tap in to different things, that's like ahead of time, people, they all,
Oh yeah.
but I think it's the eye of the beholder. Like, it's how you, like what you said earlier, a second ago. It's how you feed it. It's how you use it.
Yeah, I think that's the main key.
That's
And
the
like
key.
I said, it's like there's no law that says when you use it, that has to be the master. So it's like, why are we even, it's like, forget that part. You use it however you use it. But yeah, man, I mean, you're pushing the line, bro. And guess what?
Thank you.
You can never get anywhere unless you push the line. And sometimes unless you fail. I failed a lot. I've had, try to do hybrid stuff and it just wasn't, it was too much. It was too ambitious, and you keep trying, you know what I mean? And then suddenly the technology catches up and, things become normal, bro. So, listen, man, you've been a real inspiration, man. I know we've been friends and all that, but I just really wanted to have you on, man, to really talk and get your perspective, bro, because you're really pushing out a lot of art, and that's visually and musically and,
thank you.
Brand wise, man, all these things, bro. So, I'm very thankful that you came, man. I really appreciate
it. I'm grateful. It's a mutual respect to you as well, man. We fighting a good fight, and sometimes the longest road.
Yeah.
But these things that we learned, it's given us longevity. And that's what I'm grateful for, because we just look for ways to reinvent ourselves. And
Yeah.
that's all I've done. There's been an area in my career where I played, like you said, the regular, kit that people were playing, and then we just look for ways to evolve, with you, ejecting the clap snap and just different things outside of that.
Right.
And I think that keeps me in the game, because without that, I'll be like, man, because it's just with the mentality of people like, okay, this is what works for you. Okay, I got the number, so let me do it. And then sometimes the companies are gravitating towards, and I'm not mad,
Yeah.
but they don't. It's like, do they don't have the follow up. So
Right.
they got to come back. So I'm
Right.
just grateful that we tapped into going within and
Yeah.
looking for ways, how can we reinvent? It's nothing wrong with being inspired. We
Right.
all are inspired.
Right.
How can we take what inspired us, but like find our own way to voice it where it's not identical? So that's what I'm on. I love inspiring the generation, because it inspires me
Yeah.
and pushes me too. And I'm just the type of person, like, if somebody's doing something, I want to go the opposite way.
Yeah.
Well, it's always it's a good. I won't say it's a bad thing, but that's just been part of my journey, just being like going against the grain.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating at one time. You know how it is when you feel like you. I want to say we didn't even know we were ahead thinkers. We just
Right.
felt like we had something in us, and that was a part of and we were just getting it out. And then people they read it, and then sometimes, I remember I was not getting bullied, but people not having the most positive things saying, just by looking at the kit, not even hearing it, just like seeing it,
Right.
and it's like, I didn't do that when I came up. Like, when I seen um DJ Ned and all these guys with these like Terry Bozzio, I was like, yo, what's that?
Yeah.
I'm gonna try that out. So I just think, it's important for us in our position that we are to re-educate people on the things that we're seeing,
Yeah.
because it's just otherwise this stuff just dies out. It
Yeah,
just
man.
gets old. So I'm just grateful for cats like you fighting a good fight, that's doing it, on various levels, and also sharing.
Right. Right. Yeah.
We didn't always have people sharing. We had to we was bumping our heads, figuring it out.
And no social media, bro. What? No social media.
No.
You had to get them VHS tape from somewhere and a tape of somebody that they took off a TV. It was a whole stitch thing of how to find information, back then. And, now, man, to give you what I've been on lately, man, I'm like heavily in this app space. And I'm not talking about this is before all these things now where you just prompt and it makes a whole app for you. That's kind of the same as just using Suno without, just prompting. I'm talking about actually vibe coding directly. So it's like, you can, the AI is here to help us code, but this is still going line for line and like, piece by piece, area by area, constructing the exact app you want to do what you want. And there's a lot of hands-on in that thing. Each app I do probably 100 builds before it's ready to go to market. So I've been heavy in that. I got 3 on the App Store now, and I got 4 more coming. And
Awesome.
man, but I want it's stuff that it's for people it's solving problems. I'm trying to get people more adept with how to conceptualize using AI in their workflow of different things, not just music. So I've been very, I have the same energy for that as, how when we sit behind the MP, it's like, I've been developing that, man. So I'll share some of that stuff with you too, man.
Man, I'm grateful. Congratulations, man. You always pushing the envelope. So I'm just grateful. Everything you said to me, it's a mutual respect. And I'm just grateful for us, in our culture, to have people that's like, thinking ahead, okay, like if money's right here, we gotta get some other bags, get some other bags happening. So kudos for you. You're inspiring me. Now I want to tap into, and I'm hoping, to hear the things that you're working on. Big respect, man. That's super dope.
Well, I appreciate you, bro. Well, once again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Daru Jones on the TrevBeats Show. Thank you, my bro. I really appreciate you coming, man, and we got to do it again.
Looking forward. Salute. Keep pushing.
There's nothing like talking shop with your homies that are really for and about the culture and pushing the culture. So I really appreciate Daru for coming down. All of his links of everything will be in the description. So make sure you're checking out all his original stuff. on his imprint, Rusick Records. If you like what we're doing at this channel, we have membership tiers available that you can subscribe to. The button's down below. Also, you can run by the merch store and grab something if you want to show your support for the TrevBeats Show. We really appreciate it. And if you just want to be a subscriber and listen, that's awesome. And, we'll continue with this content, and we really appreciate the support. So until then, we'll see you on the next episode. Go be great. TrevBeats Show, we out.
It's the TrevBeats Show and we out. We out. We out. We out. We out. We out. It's the TrevBeats Show and we out. It's the TrevBeats.